Hello and welcome to Community Chats. Great to connect with you once again. As I was coming on to do this introduction, I just watched an interview with a parent of a daughter who's in her 20s and lives in Ottawa. The daughter has cerebral palsy, and the mother was sharing some of the struggles that she and her family have had. Many people are in a similar situation. The story continues with an interview with the chair of the Ottawa Carleton Association for people with developmental disabilities. And he reminded that there are 53,000 people waiting for service right now. It's an incredibly long list. The mom that was talking about said she's been trying to obtain adequate support for her daughter for more than 10 years. One of the responses that our organization is participating along with Community Living Ontario is the Waiting to Belong campaign. I'd encourage you to take a look. If you search up Waiting to Belong or hashtag Waiting to Belong, you'll be directed to the Community Living Ontario site and you can get more detail there. We could really use your support. Today, I'm going to interview Heather McDonald, who's the CEO of the United Way of the Greater Toronto Area. The United Way plays a pretty important role in shaping how our communities come together to support one another, and that work feels especially important right now. We spoke about her path into her new role, her experience in the social services sector, including her time at LOFT, as well as the vision behind the United Way's strategic plan, which they're rolling out over the next 10 years. We also talked about the importance of giving and what real impact looks like beyond the numbers. This was a really great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did recording it. So I'm really happy to welcome Heather McDonald to our Community Chats podcast today. Heather, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Brad.
Great. So you're fairly new to your role, but not to the sort of social service sector in Toronto. You've got a lot of history, but we actually have a history that goes back a long, long time to the Ontario Camp of the Deaf was where we first met each other many, many years ago.
Yeah, many years ago, I was 14 years old and think I was there from 14 to 17 years old. Yeah. And it was actually a formative experience. It was amazing. And it was because I took sign language lessons at Bob Rumble Center of the Deaf.
Yeah.
And from that, I kind of found out about the camp. And I have a second cousin who's deaf. So my mom said, hey, if you have someone in your family who is deaf, we all learn sign language. So my sisters, we all took classes, and that's how I got connected to Bob Rumble. But yeah, I was young, and it was really amazing because that was a camp that just opened its doors to people that had traditionally been excluded from the camp experience. And they made do with what they had, both with design and
Yep.
the camp, and they just opened their doors to serve people that faced probably barriers to go to other camps. And I look back and I think that was pretty a bold place, and one that actually made a big statement around who's excluded from things and making sure that you answer that need, right? I thought it was pretty remarkable.
It is, and almost everybody I talk to that has gone to a deaf camp or camps in general has that same impression that it was a formative time. It made a lot of impact on how you live the rest of your life. We actually have a camp at Community Living that we've run for many years, and we've got a large group of staff that are with us because they started there when they were started as teenagers and have continued on. So there is something about a camp and what happens and how much of an impact it makes on people's lives.
You can't go wrong with a camp alumni, right? They are used to being there, make their own fun, they get along with folks. They're there because they're driven by the mission of the camp. I mean, I also worked as a camp counselor after Ontario Camp of the Deaf at a camp with folks with physical challenges, all the hands-on care, and that's the sort of camp I ended up being at for another 5 or 6 years after Ontario Camp of the Deaf. I loved it. And you just meet like-minded people that are there to have fun, there to learn, there to be part of a team. and just generally special type of people are brought together. I am still friends with people from that
Yeah, yeah,
experience,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. And well, the other thing about maybe Def Camp in particular, certainly others, is there's this spirit of, well, we'll just figure it out. We don't have a
Yeah.
great plan always or any plan, but we'll see what comes and we'll figure it out and we'll make it work. I love that sort of that spirit of just getting things done and making it all come together.
Well, I remember some folks at that camp, and I'm like, where would these folks go? I remember going, I'm like, camp, it's going to be children. And then I remember going on the bus actually for Ontario
Yeah,
Camp of the
yeah.
Deaf, 14 years old. I'm like, wow, oh my gosh, these are all adults, right? These are people older than
Yeah,
me. And then I realized it was my first experience to realize, oh my goodness, many of these folks are campers. And
yeah, yeah.
someone handed me a list to do attendance. And so I just really remember that moment and think, and I feel like I really grew up, there,
Yeah,
and it was like, oh yeah, I could do this, and then just great people. It was a really
yeah.
great experience, but I was very naive to the needs in our community and the needs that Ontario Camp of the Deaf responded to
Yeah.
until I actually entered that bus.
Yeah, yeah. So, you after camp and going to school and all that, you got into social work.
Mhm.
Um, how much of your camp experience, or tell us about that journey. How did you end up wanting to get into a social work field and
Mhm.
choosing that as a career?
Well, I mean, I think I was always into working with people, right? And doing things with people. And in fact, because of my experience, and I used to volunteer at the hospital. I like to work with people. I thought healthcare is kind of cool. I thought occupational therapy might be cool, but then really didn't like calculus and didn't like the sciences. But when I went to university, I studied sociology and psychology, and I really liked that degree. But then I actually had kind of two options. One was law school, if you can believe it, and then the other was social work. And I decided that social work would make me more happy, just more interaction with people, more opportunity to transform stuff from relationships. Anyway, I'm really glad I chose that. So after I did my undergrad, I did my master's of social work. And
Hmm.
that was really on the ground. You get a lot of practicum experience. And I actually I sought out practicums that I would push me, and actually quickly realized, okay, child welfare, not for me. I didn't like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it was good to get that experience. I worked in a hospital. Also, I'm like, that was really good experience. I'm not into the what needs to be very structured kind of
Yeah.
environment in a hospital. That's not for me. Again, really glad to have experience in that setting. And then just ended up and I also always thought I'd work with people with disabilities because I worked and did that all through university. That was my volunteerism, working in a
Yep.
pool, helping people get changed and go for a swim and get it. I did that all through with my camp friends at university. I thought I'm going to love that. I'm going to do that. But then I just ended up graduating from my master's program and being, falling in love, ended up following him to London,
Yeah.
Ontario, and I needed a job. So I ended up working in the aid service organization, like completely different from what I thought I would do. And it was really cool. So learning about substance use, learning around health promotion, stigma, all that. It was a really neat team, and then was there for a few years and then took off into kind of harm reduction, substance use, and then into housing and supportive housing after that.
Yeah, yeah. So we sort of reconnected a number of years ago when you were the CEO at Loft, and some of the stuff you were doing around housing. What about that experience did you love? Like what? Because you were at Loft quite a number of years.
19 years. I loved it. I mean, I've been at United Way Greater Toronto for 8 months. I
Yeah.
still like miss, and they're
And
amazing.
we should
And it
back up.
was
Maybe just for people, what is Loft? Maybe we'll start with
What is
that.
Loft?
Yeah.
So
Or what? Yeah.
Loft is a supportive housing outreach and case management provider for people that face barriers accessing the healthcare system.
Right.
Really, to your point earlier, talking about how they would do change, we really saw it at Loft. We need to change to adapt to the needs that are being presented by people that face gaps. So traditionally, those are people with histories of homelessness, mental health, substance use, behavioral challenges. And so that's where we would focus our efforts. But their loft would really always evolve based on the needs of the people that are not being served. I'll give you an example. There was one time that this woman was referred, and she uses a Hoyer lift, which folks in community living would know and understand. So she used a Hoyer lift and required a lot of physical support and care. And she also had a very serious mental health issue. So she was initially referred to not community living Toronto, but another organization. We're in a large geographic swath. And that organization said, look, we can't manage her mental health challenge. And so then they came to us and said, look, we have this person, they're serious mental health challenge, but they also use a Hoyer lift and require all sorts of personal care. So we just said, okay, let's figure out how to use a Hoyer lift, right? And when you do that over and over and over again, you start realizing, and I was dressed as an elf yesterday, and at one of the loft programs,
as one
does, and dressed and celebrating the holidays. I have done that for 15 years, organized a party at one of the sites, 50 formerly homeless seniors there.
Right.
And to look and see 6 to 8 Hoyer lifts there now, right? So they've just evolved over time. So it was more of a, what does LOFT do? That's the spirit. They would constantly being evolving, kind of like what we saw at Ontario Camp of the Deaf. And so they're continuing to do that based on community needs, but certainly real estate, owning, renting, was in partnership with, was a big part with, I think they're probably at about 1,900 supportive housing units. So a lot, housing was and as you know, a huge part of the answer for a lot of folks.
We just, interesting you're talking about, engaging people and meeting them where they're at and just figuring things out. We just did a podcast that I don't know if it's out yet, but interviewing a couple of staff that work for us, who were able to move a guy with an intellectual disability who was homeless living in the Junction area from the streets, and again, sleeping rough on the street or in a park or in an encampment, into an apartment on his own, doing well. But the piece was, it took 8 months, and it took a lot of creative thinking on behalf of the staff to say, we don't meet at an office, we don't meet at a formal location, we'll meet you at the Burger King. So we can go there, grab a meal, connect. But just the challenges faced by people every day, it would become time to he'd say, I lost on my ID, my stuff was stolen, and then having to go through the process of getting ID reissued before you can take the next step. All those pieces are such a lot of work for people to do, and then people living through that experience. It's tough, but hopeful work.
Yeah, it is hopeful work. And just think of what those amazing staff of your organization have learned and can spread for that and help that next person. But the other thing, there's real gaps in terms of coordinated care, because he may have had physical care needs. Anyone on the street, like, they are often very unwell. I remember we had a gentleman we served who cleaned his colostomy bag out in the Don River, right? This is very risky, right? Very ill. And so you need the physical care. You often need the personal care, which community living would, of course, rock and do so well as the care coordination, case management, housing. Community living is really well positioned to do that, because I find one of the big gaps is the personal care, is the thoughtful personal care. And at LOFT, the personal support workers were like incredible, trained on gentle persuasion, Montessori methods, to really work with folks. And I find a lot of the mental health and substance use service field is really case managers, which are people that go out, but they don't necessarily do the personal care, and they're not trained. It's a discipline. So it's a real gap in the sector. And the other is there are more high intensity supports needed for a lot of people to be housed. So more intense on-site support, for folks is needed. That's more
the key.
People.
It's not just the home for a person, but it's the support for them to be able to be successful there. So you took all of that experience And 8 months ago, you transitioned into your new role
Yeah.
as CEO at United Way, taking over for Daniele Zanotti, which those are big shoes to fill. Like
Yeah.
he was a strong leader of that organization for many years, and you've jumped in with all your experience, which is fantastic. What made you want to make that move, and how's it going?
Oh, well, I really at the onset said, yes, Daniele Zanotti has big shoes to fill. So I said, I got to wear different shoes. I'm not going to try to fill his shoes because he is a force and he's gone on to do such important things. I think, I was at Loft for 19 years and then CEO for 8. I loved it. I think I reached a point in my life that I thought, okay, I actually really like it here. I wasn't looking, which
Yeah, yeah,
is a good sign, right? I really liked where I was. And then you're kind of, okay, so I'm 52. I am going to either stay at this place I really love,
yeah.
but if I'm going to make a move, it actually does have to happen fairly soon for
Right.
me to have an impact, right? Like, I don't think I would see, I don't know, I hope to be like winding down a little bit, maybe,
Yeah, yeah.
at some point, but this is an all-in gig, right? And you actually need energy to do it. So I decided if I'm gonna, I mean, I'd be happy to stay, and I would have been happy to stay.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I could also and then I thought, oh my, I don't know. There's nothing I can think of. I would not want to work at an agency at all like Loft because
Right.
I knew I wouldn't like it as much. It was such a
Yeah.
great organization, and I loved it, and I loved the people and everything we did. I was like, I'm not going to find anything for me as reward. I don't think I'm going to find anything as rewarding
Right.
as this, or uh, I don't want to go to same. If I wanted to go to same, I'd stay where I was. So United Way is very different. And I think what it does is it is a lot of growing and learning. I love that. New people that I'm meeting, sometimes you start meeting the similar people and faces when you've been around somewhere for a long time. This is like lots of new people, new learning, talking to chief economists, a lot of time more with municipal government, where I spent a lot of time with provincial before. And so I'm just meeting a lot of really cool new people and learning tons and new perspectives. So I like that. And I also like that United Way allows me to be kind of ambitious when it comes to big challenges.
Mhm.
So, like that amazing story of that person you mentioned you helped, like Loft did that amazing, those stories. And then what is the opportunity to, tackle this big issue of homelessness differently, or a different angle,
Right.
or a different sort of thing? And then I'm like, well, the platform, donors, corporate partners, municipal, provincial, labor partners, all these folks, and our amazing 300 agencies that
Yeah.
we support and who support our work, of course, back. Well, that's actually a platform I can start doing something like that. So it was really around that sort of civic ambition to do more and different level of work that brought me here.
Yeah.
And they have a 10-year strategic plan at United Way Greater Toronto. And some people say, why would you want to go somewhere that already got their strategic plan set? Wouldn't you want to figure out what that strat plan should be? But I disagree. I mean, I said I went to United Way because I like their strat
You
plan.
love the plan, so
I
yeah,
love the
it
plan.
was a
And I
draw.
also said a strat plan is bigger than the CEO. It's not about the
Right.
CEO. It's about what's needed in the organization. It's fed from what our communities and all our partners are saying, what our data and research is saying. So I'm really excited about that. It's what I've come, why I came here for. Now you said,
Yeah.
how's it going? I would say, it's high momentum. It's a lot more fundraising, Brad, than I've ever done, right?
Yeah.
So revenue generation is huge. Our goal is to raise $112 million this year. That money goes out right away in year. So we have a commitment to people like community living to deliver. And so we
Yeah.
take that really seriously. There is workplaces, major donors, don't just events like CN Tower, and thanks for coming out and supporting all that stuff, and through
Yeah.
the own campaign that you have done for years, and we're so grateful for that. All of those are all people needing to be, organized, and so the
Yeah.
team's done a great job. But it's been like, what's that term mean? Where am I going? A lot of that. And also the team has had to, anything you do for the first time takes 5 times as long, right? So
Yeah.
I've had to learn, oh, I'm meeting with Brad. Yeah, we already knew each other, but
Yeah.
where's Brad and what does he do? And how does he support United Way? And it just takes learning for every single interaction. I said it feels like I've met my mother-in-law 8 times for the first time, 8 times a
Yeah.
week. Like it's high stakes.
Yeah.
You really got to present and be strong. And I want that for you to show up for
Yeah.
United Way really well. So it's exhausting, but I remember my first year as CEO at Loft, I was exhausted too. Like I remember coming home and falling asleep within 10 minutes
Yeah.
because you're thinking, you're constantly learning. And I expected it is what I'll say, that it would be this hard. And it has been hard, but
Yeah.
joyful, delightful, fun, rewarding,
Yeah, and I
all
guess
those things too.
full disclosure, United Way does fund Community Living Toronto, and we were talking before we started. Somewhere since at least 1959 we've been
Yeah.
associated with United Way, and you are a great funder in that you understand the needs of operating an organization and the administration and support that goes in with that, and the challenges of direct service, and you've been a really faithful funder over the years. You started out your first sort of meeting of all the agencies. You made a speech, and you sort of started off on this thing of I've been there, right? Sort of relating to the fact that with the leaders in the room that you're new to the United Way role, but you understand, you've been there around what it's like to operate an organization. There's a lot of reward that comes from the work that is done, but there's also a lot of challenge behind it. And I think that was a really powerful way to sort of frame your work as CEO. Now that you've been there for 8 months, we can talk about the fundraising piece in a minute, but
Yeah.
what's some of the impact that's stood out the most that you've seen from the network of several hundred agencies that you've seen across the GTA?
Oh, there's a lot. I have seen ideas coming for things from organizations, questions we have, and going and getting incredible, thoughtful answers from people or coalitions. So they're making us like maybe a major donor's like, I want to make a difference in this area. So we can say, hey, we've got 16 organizations that we fund that do
Yeah.
example newcomer services in Peel region, and so let's pull them together and let's see what we can create. So that the the real impact that United Way has is the network of the web around United Way, and that we have a duty to leverage it, because when you talk about being in the CEO role, it's lonely. It can be lonely. You're busy. You never know what sort of operational crisis will come. You got to deal with it. And so what United Way must do is use our platform for the greater good for communities. So that for me is about those big solutions and bringing together our valued partners to give us ideas on what should be done and also help be part of that solution. So that is exciting. I've learned a lot, through that network of community agencies is so important. I mean, through our investment, when we touched 1.8 million people last year,
Wow.
that's incredible. And going out to the other sites, I think so those are through a huge range of services,
Yeah.
like what we're
Yeah.
doing with you, Brad, what we're also doing with newcomers, food security, hubs of care, one-stop shop in the neighborhoods that need it most, mental health, youth services, like job readiness and employment. Like it's really about the social conditions that we need to help address and lifting that are really underlying drivers of poverty,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we're trying
Yeah.
to address them. So it's incredible, the variety, and it's really based on what the neighborhood and community has identified they need, which I
Right.
love. The United Way really recognizes the wisdom of the people who are doing the services and in the neighborhood. We are in the neighborhoods too. But I met a woman at the Jane and Finch Center. It's one of our funded organizations. Yep. And she receives a community action grant to help people parents who've lost a child to gun violence or a child who's at risk. She's a woman with lived experience now, leads this services, these innovative programs in her community, and the Jane Finch Center is that place where she kind of
Right.
has a home, right? A kind of ambition home, right? So I think those hubs and those those agencies that can provide a leap for like a platform for these really important neighborhood innovations is great. And I see United Way very responsive to those sorts of innovations.
Hmm.
Like a food bank that said, hey, we need to do some renovations to create a more dignified, efficient experience for clients.
Yeah.
And United Way can, fund that. We're very flexible around where the needs are and be
Yeah.
responsive. So I'm really excited about what they do, but they're very thoughtful in looking at what are the trends, what is the community, where are the communities, where is poverty going to be now, where's it going to be in 10 years? Like
Right.
we are thinking about that, and
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 that's
yeah,
often work that's relegated to government, or people think, well, somebody else is working on that. But to have the United Way sort of identify neighborhoods, identify trends, and be able to act quite quickly, and I guess is really a benefit to the city, to the region. What? So I'm struck, like $112 million a year raised, with, as you say, that going, most of that going out the door to support community agencies. I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but the United Way GTA is the largest United Way in the world.
it is.
And I'm always struck by the there's this, sometimes I think this tendency to look back into the good old days and back when people were more generous or provided more support. But $112 million coming out of the GTA, we're an incredibly generous city. You could make the
Yeah.
case it should be more, but my goodness, 112 million is a lot of money, plus what other organizations are doing. What's it been like to be part of that campaign where people are energetically doing fundraising to the needs that you're identified? And before you answer
Yeah.
that, I should say our own organization, we have done a campaign for years, and we have a goal of $50,000 that we contribute to United Way. And again, we do that not because we're a recipient of United Way funding, but we're a presence in the city and want to help,
Yeah.
want to contribute. So our employees give, a couple dollars on payroll deduction, or
It's
buy
wonderful.
eat walking tacos as a fun way of raising some money. We had a group of 11 people climb the CN Tower and raise thousands
Yeah.
of dollars. So it becomes a real community building piece. So that's enough about us. But what's it been like being part of that campaign, and the energy and the logistics that go into it must just be
Oh my goodness, there's
overwhelming.
lots of logistics. But you mentioned like that it really is that community building. People are
Yeah,
hungry for that, Brad. People are hungry for that. They're hungry for that in our community where I think we're seeing people doing well in terms of wealth accumulation and other people really, really struggling. And
yeah,
I have seen a real awareness of people who are in a more lucky position financially. We have something like over half Canadians don't know how they would pay their expenses for the month if they lost their paycheck for the
right.
month. So that tells you there are a lot of people anxious out there in the world. I think folks doing well, they do recognize that and want to help. And so, but also I can see that I aware that there's a division around that people doing well and then people really struggling with affordability. I think people are very sensitive to that and see United Way as kind of a United Way forward and what's feeling
Hmm.
like a bit divided. Seeing what's happening politically south of the border, I think
Yeah,
people are just a little bit uncomfortable and noticing need. I think homelessness as well has been extremely visible for people in an even more profound ways, heartbreaking ways. I think people are just seeing and hearing of the needs, and that is having an impact on giving.
yeah,
Um, but the mechanism, it's really interesting as people are returning to the office now, with workplace return. We're seeing that with many workplaces, many corporations, and of course the province and government. And they're looking for opportunities for employees to be engaged. And guess what? United Way raises funds. And we also do that through employee engagement. So I think that has really been exciting for employers when they're like, wait a second, we can give back to the community. And the other byproduct of that, like the other mutual benefit, is that people are returning and spending time with
Yeah.
the accounting team is there with this team and then that team,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
getting to spend time together. And I think it's a good time for that for the workplaces in general. They're looking for that. And our goal is 112. I mean, it's a 4 million increase over last year.
Right.
And I will tell you, we have ambitions. We're going to continue to grow it,
Yeah.
right?
Good.
Because the need is such, if you look at who are typically recipients of transformational gifts, they're institutions like academic institutions
Right.
or hospitals. So we really want to build and have United Way Greater Toronto recognizable as that institution for those transformational gifts as well, and continue our really successful workplace campaign. So it's going to be a big lift, but
Yeah.
with the need out there, it's incredibly motivating.
Good. That's excellent. When do we find out whether you've achieved your campaign goal or not?
Well, and this is so funny, a hangover from my work as CEO at LOFT. So Brad, you would know, you don't look at your revenue on April 1st and see zero.
Right.
And I did. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually have to
Yeah.
fundraise everything. We start at zip. So what I've also had to get used to, which is heart palpitations, is a profile of your revenue that looks
Right.
like dip down and then it gets better.
Yeah.
So our big intense months are September to December, right until the end of December. So we're going hard processing gifts and calling people and trying to close their generous gifts till the end of December. Our year actually ends end of March, just
Right.
like probably yours.
Like ours. Yeah.
But we're gonna know if we've been successful or not, really. End of December gives us a huge indication.
Good.
So your revenue is just like flat and then it goes up, and I'm like, oh my golly,
You'll get used
it's
to
an
it. You'll
adjustment.
get used to it. You get used to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
so?
And you got a
Well,
good team around you, so they'll help.
they're amazing, and they smile and laugh at me because I'm just like, oh my goodness. But you're right. Great team, great supporters, and people who are the corporations that donate, they are invested in us being
Yeah.
successful. They really care about United Way. So that I don't feel alone either within United Way. I've got an amazing team, but also our external, like you, Brad,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
your team
No,
doing what you did.
Yeah, and we had a lot, like again with our United Way campaign, as many things that we do, you try and have a lot of fun with it, right?
Yeah.
So you're addressing a pressing issue, and there's a lot of impact that you're having, but as you're doing these things, it's most you want to have fun doing it, get to
You
know
did
your
a
colleagues,
spooky
and
walk, didn't you? Do a spooky walk?
we did a colleague of ours, James, does a haunted walk through
I
U
love
of
it.
T, and it was spooky. There's a
It was
lot of
spooky.
there's a lot of dark history at U of T that I did not haunted dark history. That was interesting. Next year
I
we'll do
would
it again
like to have
next year, and we'll
participated. I had a
yeah
conflict that night, but I would have
yeah
loved
yeah
to
yeah.
have gone. I love it.
Oh, it
But
was
yeah,
fun.
creative and fun. And
It was fun.
it shows that you're listening to what the staff that work with you do, right? And
Yeah
what their interests are, which is
yeah
great.
yeah. So one of the things, just as we wrap up, one of the things we ask people on our podcast is what belonging means to them. One of the things around having an intellectual disability, many times people feel like they don't belong, or they're present in a community but not always valued and kind of feel excluded. And belonging is a pretty powerful place, and we want to get to a place where people with intellectual disabilities not only are in a place but are valued in that place and feel like that they belong. So I'll put the question to you: what does belonging mean to Heather?
Yeah. It takes me back just to a story of one of the sites we had at Loft. It was my first week of work. Before I was CEO, I was like a, senior leader there. And I went to a place, it's on St. George, one of those, our supportive housing sites. And we were sitting I was meeting the residents, maybe it was week 2 or something. And there was a woman there, very concerned. She had just moved in. And she's like, I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I belong here at this house. And she was talking about that in the meeting. There was probably about 10 people in the kitchen. And then this guy, he was in the corner looking like not looking at all. And then he just
Yeah.
said, "You belong," like that. And then this other person looked at her and said, "You belong." Then everyone just kind of said, "You belong." And and she just was quiet and looking at everybody. And it had such an effect on me. She ended up living with Loft until she, passed away. So that it is there's an individual power that comes to saying, "Do I belong here?" But ultimately, there is an expression we all need to make
Mm,
to have someone feel like they belong. So we have a personal responsibility.
yeah.
But I would say honestly, belonging for me is, you've heard the expression, you do need a home. You need a stable place to feel safe, a
Yep.
home. You need some sort of purpose, whether that's a pet, something you do, you put out the recycling, you have a volunteer job, you have a job, you call a friend to see how they're doing. There's some sort of purpose.
Yeah.
And then the third is you do need a friend. And I don't think you need 10 friends. I don't think you need 2 friends. I think you need 1 friend. But I do think you do need to be a friend with yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I think there is a need for connection with another person. And so for me, belonging, I mean, I'm extremely lucky that for me, belonging often feels being around my family. I'm very, very lucky around that. But it comes back to those 3 things, and to remember that. I mean, I think of that guy just saying, "You belong."
You belong.
he was
You're
he was
in.
kind of
You're
quiet,
in.
right? I was like, this isn't going well. He was like looking at the
Yeah.
wall, but he knew what she needed, and he just showed
Cut
up for
right
her
to it.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think places like Community Living Toronto really help create and support the fertile ground for that to take shape and happen.
Yeah.
So there's my answer. But belonging is
Good answer.
definitely playing rummy with my 20-year-old,
Yeah.
sitting on the ground, like I have ever since he was 8.
Yeah.
He's at university, he's coming home, and he knows the first thing in the docket is a rummy game. So
Nice.
that for me, again, my purpose is very clear. I've got a friend and I'm doing that in my home.
Yeah.
Those 3 ingredients in play.
Excellent. Great answer. We'll add that to our Hall of Fame answers around belonging. That was
Hall of Fame!
well, I know.
You're
Well,
the other Hall of
you had a
Fame
story
answer.
and you had 3 points. It was excellent. Hey, thanks for taking the time to do this.
You bet.
Thanks for your leadership of United Way. I know it's a big challenge, and I know this is a busy time for you, so we appreciate you carving out some time for us. Again, as I mentioned, Community Living Toronto is a fan of United Way and love the way that you provide support. It allows us to do things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. And as you get more comfortable in the role and you continue to raise money and make big change, know that ourselves and the other, hundreds of agencies that are part of the network have your back. We're supportive. So thank you and way to go.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm a fan of Community Living Toronto. I'm a fan of all you do for our community. So I'm very grateful. And thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, watching, and sharing. We release a new episode of Community Chats on the 15th and the 30th of each month, so don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date.